Hey everybody, wanted to talk to you today about weapons of World War One. There were lots of advances in weaponry before World War One that were put to the test in World War One. For example, planes. Planes weren't invented till just a few years before World War One, and usually they would use them for reconnaissance to look down and see what the enemy was doing. But later they learned that they could fire guns and drop bombs from planes. They had about 70 different types of planes in World War One. Their top speed was about 100 miles an hour, and that was pretty fast. They were generally too small to carry a parachute in. German generals would discourage their pilots from wearing parachutes because they didn't want them to think that they had a backup plan. They wanted them to win or die. So I've got some short videos I'm going to play during this presentation, and the first one is about airplanes. So just I don't own any of this in case that's a problem in the future. These are just other people's videos that I've found. Here you go.
As more machines powered by self-cooling rotary engines took to the sky, their role grew from simple reconnaissance to combat. The first hostile skirmishes consisted of pilots lobbing grenades or rope to tangle the enemy's propeller as they circled each other at a breathtaking 60 miles an hour. "Ah, you will not catch me, Fritz, no way!" "Take that, you crazy French person, you!" Some even exchanged revolver fire. All very tricky whilst you're trying to fly a primitive single-seater aeroplane. Then Frenchman Roland Garros worked out how to fix a forward-facing machine gun to his aircraft, meaning the pilot could look where he was going and where he was firing at the same time. Forward-facing machine guns were a great advantage, but one slight problem was that you were firing bullets into your own spinning wooden propeller. Not a good thing. So Roland, being a clever chap, attached metal plates to deflect the bullets and thus prevent them from making mincemeat of his propeller. Très bien. Garros took off with his high-tech gun rig on the 1st of April 1915. He surprised a German pilot by flying straight at him, firing guns through his propeller, and successfully downed the enemy. Dutch engineer Anton Fokker soon came up with a more sophisticated solution than deflector plates. It was called the interrupter gear. The interrupter system, which was essentially a crankshaft-driven mechanism, allowed the machine gun to fire when the propeller was clear of the barrel, but disabled it when the propeller was in front of it, like that. Simple. The levers and rods of the interrupter gear put an end to the problem of shooting off your own propeller. In 1916, the Fokker Eindecker, complete with interrupter gear, hit the skies over Europe. It was a very effective fighter and won Germany air superiority. The Allies came to know it as the Fokker Scourge.
All right, so there's the first video, and that was about World War One airplanes. And now we're moving on to different types of guns. And here's a picture of British soldiers using an early machine gun in 1917. And if you notice, the machine guns were big and bulky, and they had two men at least, to use them. Most infantrymen would use a rifle, and they could shoot about 100 rounds per minute. I think they would load them in about 5 at a time. They would be able to put them in the clip and shoot them off. And they had to clean their guns a lot because down in the trenches it was really dirty. And here's a German using an early flamethrower. Notice one tank, and very dangerous, but also very menacing to the enemy. And here are British soldiers using a mortar. So you would drop the shell in. It could throw 22 3-inch shells per minute with a range of 1,200 yards, so close to a mile. Um, the next video I have talks a lot about infantry weapons. So here you go.
Infantry weapons of World War I. The First World War saw many varied weapons used by soldiers. Let's look at what was manufactured and being used on the battlefield. The rifle. Most soldiers would be equipped with a bolt-action rifle. Rounds were fired individually, with the bolt being opened and closed after each shot. The rifle was reloaded by loading a clip into the magazine, and they had to be cleaned regularly because the dirt in the trenches could jam the firing mechanism. The rifles most commonly used by the Allied powers were the short magazine Lee Enfield Mark III for Britain and the Commonwealth, the Lebel and Berthier 8mm for France, the Monleasher Carcano M1891 6.5mm for Italy, the Mosin Nagant M1891 7.62 for Russia, and the Springfield 1903 30-06 for the USA. For the Central Powers, the rifles used were the Mauser Gewehr 98 7.92mm for Germany, the Steyr Monleasher M95 for Austria-Hungary and Bulgaria, and the Mauser M1877 7.65mm for Turkey. The bayonet continued to see use in the First World War. However, its use was now more psychological than practical. They resembled a knife that would fix onto the end of the rifle and be used for close combat fighting. They were also used by soldiers for non-combative use, such as opening cans and toasting bread. Machine guns of World War I were modeled on Hiram Maxim's 1884 design. With a sustained fire of 450 to 600 rounds per minute, waves of troops could be cut down. Put simply, the machine gun could have the same worth as 80 rifles. Noteworthy weapons include the heavy machine gun used by Germany, the Maschinengewehr 08, the LMG used by British forces known as the Lewis gun, which featured a top-mounted pan magazine, and the BAR, or Browning automatic rifle, which was used late in the war by U.S. forces and was quicker to reload than the Lewis or French shotgun. The submachine guns, such as the German MP-18, were used in the last parts of the war. The submachine gun was developed during the war as an effective portable firepower solution. They proved effective in close combat trench fighting by German stormtroopers. Flamethrowers were a terrifying weapon, first brought to the battlefields of World War I by the German army. Tanks on the soldiers' back used nitrogen pressure to spray oil fuel, which was ignited as it left the muzzle of a pipe. Grenades were used to clear out the enemy in their trenches and dugouts. They were either hand-thrown or fired from a rifle, and depending on the type of grenade, would either detonate on impact or via a timed fuse. The pistol was issued to officers, pilots, and tank operators. Because of the portable size of the pistol, it would serve well in the cramped conditions of a biplane cockpit or the interior of a tank. Lastly, we have the Trench Raiding Club. An almost medieval throwback, this melee weapon was popular for trench raiding expeditions as a quiet way of killing or wounding enemy soldiers. Now you know about some of the weapons used during World War I. Leave a comment below letting us know which weapon you found the most interesting.
Watch our other videos to learn more. Get your copy of Simple History World.
All right, we're back with our special guest, Samson. Look in the camera, Tampin. Say hello. He's half mini pincher, half chihuahua. He's cute. All right. I hope you enjoyed that video. And now we're going to talk about another weapon of World War I, which was gas. All right. Mustard gas and other biochemical gases were being used, chlorine gas, all things that were very nasty when you inhaled them, could damage your lungs and kill you. If you look here, there's German soldiers and their mule wearing Germany's first gas mask. And I have a video here about gas. And here you go.
First World War technology. Chlorine gas. In 1914, a chemist called Fritz Haber offered his knowledge to the German army. He soon began experimenting with chlorine gas to be used in trench warfare. In April of 1915, 150 tons of lethal chlorine gas was used by the German forces against the French army at Ypres. The French soldiers witnessed yellow lime clouds with a distinctive smell of pineapple and pepper slowly drifting toward their trenches. The French infantry assumed that the Germans were merely using a smokescreen at first, until they started to complain about pains in their chest and a burning sensation in their throats. As the realization of a gas attack became apparent, the French ran away from the area, putting a gap in the Allied line. The German army was hesitant to advance forward due to concerns for what the chlorine gas would do to them. This enabled Canadian and British troops to recapture the position before German forces could break through. Chlorine gas would destroy the respiratory organs of the unfortunate victim and lead to a slow death by asphyxiation. Weather was an important factor in gas attacks. When the British Army launched a gas attack on the 25th September 1915, the wind blew it back into the faces of British troops. This was solved in 1916 when gas shells were used with heavy artillery, increasing the range of attack. So, how would you counter a gas attack? At first, Allied troops used cotton pad masks or even handkerchiefs that had been soaked in urine. The ammonia in the pad, it was discovered, would neutralize the chlorine. As the war progressed, soldiers were equipped with gas masks and anti-asphyxiation respirators, which were more efficient means of protection from gas.
Watch our other videos to learn more. Get your copy, Full History, World War.
All right, so gas was pretty lethal, and you didn't want to get stuck in a gas attack without your gas mask. And it's pretty gross that they had to use urine initially to keep the gas from, getting into their lungs. But a necessity is the mother of invention. And now we have to talk about something that's pretty interesting to a lot of people, which is tanks. Tanks, land battleships. People had been thinking about these since the medieval times. Leonardo da Vinci even drew up some early tank designs. So here's an interesting video I found about tanks.
Panzerwagen A7V tank. Germany was unusually slow to realize and develop a tank, considering that in 1916, the British and French had introduced tanks on the battlefield. When the British used their new tanks at the Battle of Flers-Courcelette in September 1916, the Germans, shocked, finally realized that they needed to design their own tank. The specification for the tank would be a maximum weight of 30 tons, be based on the Austrian-made Holt chassis, have the ability to cross ditches up to 1.5 meters or 4.92 feet wide, to reach a top speed of at least 12 kilometers an hour or 7.5 miles per hour, and be armed with a cannon at the front and rear, and have several machine guns. The committee, under these requirements, produced the Sturmpanzerwagen A7V, the A7V referring to their department. The A7V resembled a large armored box hull, top tracks, and suspension from a Holt tractor that had been modified by Joseph Vollmer. The length of its tracks were short, which gave the tank poor off-road speed, and its high center of gravity meant that it could easily get stuck or tip over. The armor on the A7V was between 15mm or 0.59 inches to 30mm or 1.2 inches thick. Its armament was a 57mm gun at the front and 6 Maxim machine guns. The crew was a minimum of 18. All of these specifications contributed to its nickname of the Moving Fortress by the British. Production of the A7V began in October 1917, with 100 units ordered while training was going on. The first A7Vs went into battle in March 1918, providing support for the infantry north of the St. Quentin Canal. 3 of the tanks suffered mechanical problems before they even had a chance to enter combat, and the lack of trench crossing ability meant the active tanks were soon lagging behind the infantry. On the 24th of April 1918, 3 A-7Vs engaged in tank versus tank combat, which was the first of its kind. They went against 3 Mark IVs, 2 females and 1 male tank. Both sides' tanks were damaged, but the male Mark IV was able to hit and knock out one of the A-7Vs. The 2 remaining A-7Vs in turn withdrew. The A-7Vs saw further combat, but the Germans preferred to use captured British tanks for their better off-road performance. Unfortunately, only 20 out of 100 A-7Vs were built, making it more of a propaganda device than an effective impact on the battlefield. The A-7V was the only German tank in World War I to be used in combat. Other variants include the Überlandwagen supply carriers and the experimental A-7V/U, which tried to reproduce the all-terrain capability of the British tanks with all-round tracks and sponsons. Watch our other videos to learn more. Get your copy of...
Okay, so the early tanks of the Germans didn't do too well. The tanks of the British were doing a lot better, and they would capture them and use those. There's tons of pictures of tanks and different types of tanks, but Germany's early tank was a failure. But one thing that Germany didn't slouch on was their U-boat, and they used these U-boats to broaden the scope of warfare into the sea, and they started actually taking out supply ships that would bring supplies to other nations that were fighting Germany, trying to cut off their supplies and basically starve them into submission. Here is the final video I have today, and it's about World War I U-boats, or the Unterseeboot.
In Berlin, Ludendorff is worried about strikes and social unrest that echo the events in Russia. The munitions factories have been kept running for the last 3 years by exhausted women and soldiers no longer able to serve at the front. The famous Burgfrieden, the sacred union between socialists and government authorities that had made the war possible, begins to break down. Key German socialist leaders abandoned the party to found the Spartacus Revolutionary Movement, which calls for an immediate end to the war. Ludendorff sees but one solution: a German victory as quickly as possible. Bring England to its knees with what he calls unrestricted submarine warfare. His decision will change the course of history. 100 German submarines were ordered to attack any and all commercial vessels, including neutral ships, contrary to international laws of the sea. The German Chancellor, Bethmann Hollweg, fears an American reaction. He says Germany is lost. The Unterseeboote, or U-boats, received the order to fire their torpedoes at any ship supplying England, including American ones. The German admirals calculate that if their submarines sink 500,000 tons of ships a month, England will capitulate in 6 months, whereas if the Americans enter the war, they will not be ready for a year. The First Battle of the Atlantic begins. These submarine commanders are the new heroes of Germany. Among them is this descendant of French émigrés, now a model Prussian, Lothar von Arnaud de la Perrière. His submarine, U-35, stars in a propaganda film glorifying his accomplishments. He proudly takes the famous Lloyd's Register of Ships, published by the British Insurance Company, and listing every commercial vessel in the world, and crosses out his latest kill. Lothar von Arnaud de la Perrière will sink 200 ships, over 500,000 tons. A record. He writes, "I would have preferred to fight the enemy in real naval battles, rather than destroy unarmed vessels. But we made sure that the crews were in lifeboats. We pointed them toward the closest port, and sank their ship with our cannon. In reality, however, chance against the U-boats lurking below the surface. And the 1,700 French soldiers aboard the transport ship Gallia had no chance against Arnaud de la Perrière, who sank their ship without mercy. The unrestricted submarine war confirms the German Chancellor's worst fears.
All right, so there you go. As you see, the German U-boats were very instrumental in taking out the supply ships and trying to end the war by attrition, getting their enemies to leave them alone, basically, because they needed to get supplies. Also, they started attacking United States ships. So this starts to bring the United States into the war, where at first we had not been involved because it was seen as a European war and we were going to stay out of it. And on this last slide here is a picture of Germany's gigantic bomber, the Zeppelinstocken, gigantic early plane bomber. Which, if you see in relation to the people how huge it is, gigantic. And once again, good to see you guys. I hope we get back to school soon. But enjoy your time.